So, Liz Nugent is a best-selling author, acclaimed with 4 Irish Book Awards and the prestigious James Joyce Medal for Literature. She excels at crafting compelling, complex, and intricate characters. Her skillful storytelling allows her to expertly twist the plot when the story demands it, and her latest book, Strange Sally Diamond, delivers exactly that. So now that Liz, you've written like over 5 books, like, and how has your writing journey been like? And we're really intrigued to know because all of your books did have done well, like based on the research that I've done, they've done really, really well.
Yeah, I don't know how they progress from one to the other because I put up something on Facebook yesterday about it's 12 years since I finished my first book, Unraveling Oliver, although it wasn't published until 2 years later because I had to rewrite the ending so many times. But and loads of people commented and said, "Oh my God, that's my favorite book of yours." And I'm kind of going, does that mean I'm getting worse? Do you know? Oh, I'm getting worse as I go along because everybody loved Unraveling Oliver. But I know by, the reaction that Strange Sally Diamond seems to have caught the imagination of way more people. Like I think I think there's something like 11,000 reviews on Amazon, whereas there was only
Wow.
8,000 or something for Unraveling Oliver, even though that came out 10 years ago. So, yeah, I don't know how they progress from one to the other, but I know that up until this one, all of my protagonists were sociopaths or psychopaths or misogynists or something in some way. And for this one, I wrote a likable character. Um, I love Sally, I kind of fell in love with her when I was writing her because she's so honest and she says what she thinks all the time. And, occasionally it gets her into trouble. But I do that. I do that all the time. I put my foot in it. I don't recognize celebrities when I meet them. I say the wrong things all the time. So I really identify with her, even though thankfully I haven't had quite a normal-ish childhood, but nothing like hers.
I mean, that's like the fact that you resonate with her really, sort of piques our interest. So, yeah, moving on to the next question, Sonali.
Okay, so there are like two editions of the cover. So one is this one, the UK edition, and the other one is a US edition. So how were you involved in the designing process, and which one is your favorite?
Penguin UK presented me with a cover first, and it's the only time I've ever had a diva strop. You know what I mean? I just said, no way, I'm not having that as a cover. And my agent had already agreed and said, oh yeah, I really like that. But it was awful. I mean, it looked like a half price sticker had been torn off her face, is her face, and looking over her shoulder like this. And I just kind of thought, there's so many books with that looking over the shoulder, wearing a yellow Mac, running away from a lighthouse or something. And I just thought, no, I'm not having this. So eventually they came back with the cover you have there. And I was very, very pleased. And then I have a different publisher in America, Simon and Schuster, and I wish I was doing this upstairs because all the covers are upstairs. But the American cover, it's a girl. You don't see her face, but she's holding her hands like this.
Right.
Um, and I thought to myself that she looked a bit brain damaged, you know, that she that they told the art designer this is about a girl who's not normal, but that the designer thought that that meant brain damaged in some way. And she's not brain damaged,
Yeah,
she's
yeah,
just neuroatypical.
yeah,
So yeah, I definitely prefer the English one.
yeah. So, like when even the time when she went to the funeral and when she wore that hat, this is exactly what I could envision, like Sally, like walking in this sort of an attire with a red hat, and that's like literally added like the visual aspect to it.
I loved that kind of the red hat thing because her father said you wear this for special occasions. So she thinks this funeral is kind of a special occasion, which it is, but it's only much later that somebody tells her that it was an inappropriate thing to her, and she can't believe it because everybody's told her, "I like your hat" at the funeral,
Yeah.
and she's kind of going, but that really confuses her because everybody must have known, and were they all lying to her that it wasn't a nice hat, or so she gets confused by social clues like that.
Right, right. No, that completely. I mean, we completely understand Sally's character trajectory because of whatever happened and why she feels that way. So, like, we move on to the next question, Ria.
So I am hoping you saw my reel when I made it on the Strange Sally Diamond. And it literally starts from her burning her father. It was something that was so gripping, and it was like, oh my God, why would she do that? I mean, she set it on fire and left it at the like with the trash. It was something that was, how we say, expect the unexpected. So
Yeah.
how did you come up with that particular scene? I would love to know about that.
Well, it's a conversation I have with my husband sometimes, about, well, like, it's not that we always have morbid conversations. I don't want you to think that we sit around talking about our impending death all the time. But it's just one of those things that comes up every so often. And, we both want to be cremated in the end. But he would like his ashes scattered across a mountain range in the west of Ireland. And I just kind of thought, well, the chances are with modern medicine and everything, we're going to live into our 80s at least. And I think it's a bit selfish of him to expect me to climb 12 mountains to scatter ashes. So my response has always been, put me out with the bins, because it's easy. And of course he won't. I don't know what he'll do, but that's up to him, because I'll be dead and I won't know it. And that's what Sally's father says to her. He's kind of joking. He says, I'll be dead. I won't care what you mean. But like, I genuinely do think there is a lot of fuss about funerals, and that leaving instructions for your funeral is can be an odd thing to do, because you won't be there.
Right.
You know, you're not going to be aware of what happens to you afterwards. And I think it should be left to the living to suit themselves about what they want to do.
And now that we're talking about Sally per se and her thinking, so we know that Sally is a deeply complex character with a traumatic past. So how did you approach developing her character, whose emotional and mental maturity is stunned by her dark experience? And how did you go about crafting her backstory to make her both strange and relatable to the readers?
I think she's relatable because she says the things that a lot of people are afraid to say. She says that thing about wearing bras and how uncomfortable they are. And
Right.
that's true, I mean, I think every woman can identify with that.
Yeah.
But she also, she says the thing, like, I took off every filter that I had when I was writing her, so that I could say things like that, and I could have her say things like that. So that to make people think, I suppose, like, what is the right way to do something, and is there a wrong way, and it's just different. She has a different view on things. So she's relatable, but I think the backstory, I hadn't, like, I made it up as I went along, so I had no plans for anything. But I kind of thought, oh God, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I want her to dispose of her father's remains in this way, so she has to be strange for some reason. But I thought, if I write an autistic character or an Asperger's character, I'll be cancelled because I don't have Asperger's. I'm not autistic. I have no degree in psychology or psychiatry. So I just made her up as I went along, and I made I thought of this backstory as I was like maybe 40 pages in, but I had to have, because I wanted her not to remember it so that she doesn't know anything about it. So I had to have somebody who was witness
Right.
to everything that happened, and that's how Peter came about. Like, we had to find out what happened, how it happened, you know, and how it felt for him as a child. And I think actually, in the long run, he's a lot more damaged than she is, and he goes on, as we know, at the end to
Yes.
cause damage.
Yes. I think the ending really gave us the chills. I was literally staring at the wall, and I'm not even kidding. Like, that was something I don't know, it creeped. I remember it was 3 a.m. and that was the ending that I read for Peter, and I was like, how am I gonna sleep? That's gonna give me nightmares for sure.
I know.
The book was like really unsettling for me, but it was a good kind of unsettling. It was like, okay, I need more of it. I need more of it. Till the end, I was just so into it. I wanted to know what happens next. What happens next? And by the end of it, I still wanted to know what happens next. It's just something that I'm not getting over. Um I read it in December and people asked me for a thriller recommendation, and I'm like, read Strange Sally Diamond. You gotta give it a read. It is so good. And it is definitely very unsettling to read when there are such dark topics that are covered in a book. But I just want to know how was the experience of writing all that dark things? Like, what was any of it inspired with any real incident? Like, have you ever read about things like that before?
No, I mean, there have been cases like that. There have been cases where men kidnap children and then, or kidnap teenagers or whatever, and then had children with them. So that has happened. We know it's happened. The most famous of those cases, I think, was the Joseph Fritzl case in Germany, I think, and he kidnapped a girl. I think her name was Natasha Kampusch or something like that, and he kept her for 16 years. Now, this is all from memory. I never looked it up. I never went to research that. But he had several children by her, and they were all locked in this kind of annex next to the house. And that was in the middle of a town in Germany. He had neighbors on either side, and yet he managed to keep this woman for probably 20 years. And I always wondered what happened to her. And somebody said that she wrote a book afterwards about her experiences, probably ghostwritten, I would imagine. But I wonder what happened to the children who are born into that experience. And then I wondered, from the psychiatrist's adoptive father point of view, if I had the power to take away those memories by sedating her for a couple of years, and like, to the extent that she doesn't remember anything prior to her 7th birthday. If I had the power to take away those memories, would I? And I kind of thought, it's probably very unethical, but yes, I would. Maybe that's completely wrong, but I thought, yeah, I probably would.
Yeah, I
That's
think
probably why I'm not a psychiatrist.
the trauma, I think that really it's something that if someone has gone through something traumatic, and if you had the power to take that memory, I think even I think people out here also would like say a yes, because why would you want to relive something that has left a scar on you? So
Yeah.
moving on to the next one, my sister, I think she has.
Hi, Liz. So, like you were talking about Sally's father, who was a psychiatrist. Now, Sally's relationship, both with her birth parents and her adoptive parents, was crucial in shaping her strangeness, I would say, because she had a very atypical upbringing and atypical parent figures, I would say. Now, having a psychiatrist as a father for her because of her past, it was a boon, but she reaches an ages of 44 and she's at a mental age where she is considered strange. So at the same times, it's also a bane. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, having a psychiatrist as a father for her, how did it play like a dual role in shaping her as how she was?
I think he loved her, but he didn't really treat her like his own child. He treated her like a case, you
Right.
know, a case that he was looking after. So she was a case study for him. And he allowed her to do what she wanted. Her adoptive mother was always pushing that, you know, Sally should go to college and Sally should integrate into the community more. And father was saying, no, 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 let her do what she wants, because he wanted to study, you know, what became of people like this. And I thought that was really unfair of him to do that, to be to allow her to live the way she wanted, because it was clearly not healthy. Like the interaction,
Exactly.
I mean, if it wasn't for Angela, the local GP, and Nadine, and all of the new people who came to the to the um to the village, like, she would have been completely on her own, and she wouldn't have minded it, but she would never have integrated. She would never have had the life and the friends. Like, she blossomed once she went into psychotherapy, um and she accepted what the psychotherapist was telling her. She really blossomed, and I like to mirror that in the location as well, because as well as Sally blossoming, the village is growing. You know, there's a pharmaceutical company coming, and the meat plant has just opened, and there's new people coming to the village. And I wanted to reflect that in Sally's character, or reflect Sally's character in that they're both growing. The village is growing and Sally is growing. Um, so yeah, I think if you see, in 1980s Ireland, it was a very, very patriarchal society. There weren't women would never have been in charge in the psychiatric unit where Sally was taken. So her her adoptive mother played a secondary role in all of the decision making about Sally. And because her husband was the leading psychiatrist in the country, he got the case, because it would have been the most difficult case that they'd ever come across. Because that situation has not happened in Ireland, as far as we know. God. But as far as we know, that has never happened in Ireland.
Yeah, no, I think the way you brought that aspect of, Sally going through the therapy and the village itself, sort of growing. So I never looked at it from that perspective. And now that you've mentioned it, I think whenever we reread it, or whenever I reread it, I think I want to look at it from a different perspective altogether. And the fact that you spoke about therapy, so I also wanted to ask, like, how important is, can you discuss the importance of therapy in the book and the role it played in, like, Sally's journey per se? Because we see that towards the end, like, we see her, sort of come out of it, come out of the shell, but then because of therapy and the people being accepting towards her. But then how important do you feel that role of therapy is? And with time we see people accepting therapy also in today's day and age, which was not that acceptable like a couple of years back. So, like,
Sure.
a little bit of thought about on that.
Well, you know, I think in, you know, the 1980s, nobody had a therapist. And nowadays everybody has a therapist or a counselor or somebody they go to talk about their problems with. And I think the role of the psychiatrist was very helpful in getting Sally to a point where she could talk to people. And she found that, you know, that they weren't as scary as she thought they were. And that school, because her only experience of social life and social interaction really was school. And in school, when people are young, they're kind of cruel to each other without thinking about it. Like, I remember in school being bullied by a couple of people, and then meeting them later in life, and you know, seeing that they're just, you know, they're just ordinary people who are trying to get along, and maybe maybe there were things going on in their lives at the time when they were bullying. You know, bullies don't just organically happen. There's something going on at home in the family. And it was only later that I sat down actually with one of my worst bullies and had a conversation, and she told me what was going on in her own house, and I just kind of thought, wow, you know, that explains a lot. So yeah, so that's been Sally's experience, being isolated. One of the two girls is the Stella, who is also her school friend, who was also different, you know, because she had a stutter. And so the two of them were kind of on the outside. They weren't ever in the thick of things. And they were, you know, the other kids were mean to them. So why would Sally trust anybody? Like, she didn't want to, after that experience, she certainly didn't want to go to college where she knew nobody. At least in school, she could come home to her parents every night. But in university, she wouldn't have had that um, luxury. So it would have been much harder for her. But her adoptive mother, really thought that, you know, Sally needs to get out and she needs to integrate and she needs to, you know, have that experience of meeting people, and that will help her to integrate. So the psychotherapist was very good. Um, and you know, because I have been through therapy myself, and I used a lot of what I learned in that for Sally.
Right. So, yeah, I mean that completely. I mean, I completely get that you're using your personal experience and then sort of imbibing that, and that's sort of being vulnerable and showcasing a side to the readers as well. What therapy can do, and that was a beautiful message. I feel that was conveyed, and how therapy had helped Sally, towards the end. But again, the ending is something we want to discuss in detail, and we will be Sally's ending specifically. So yeah, but before we move on to, I think the next question, Sonali.
So the book talks a lot about the dark themes like abduction, misogyny, pedophilia. So how did you approach handling these dark and challenging subjects to create a story that is both evocative and sensitively presented?
I didn't really do any research on it. I just kind of thought, what would happen? Like, what would happen? What's the logical thing that would happen if this was the case? And how would he keep it a secret? And how, you know, so he lives in a big isolated house in Dublin on lots of ground in a very wealthy area. He's a dentist. He owns the house, so he doesn't have a mortgage. So he's a very wealthy man, and that buys you a lot of freedom, a lot of land. So he knows he's secure enough to be able to get away with it. And I have to say, I didn't really have any, I didn't like carry it with me. You know, I didn't carry the story with me once I closed the laptop. Close the laptop, it's over. But there was one scene that gave me a sleepless night, and that was the scene with Peter and his mother when they're locked in the room, and he is violent towards her, and
Yeah.
he's only a small boy. And you know, it's reasonable if you think that he's absolutely terrified of her, because he has been taught to be terrified of her by his father, and he's been told that she's a witch and that she's, you know, she's savage, and you know, and then he finds himself locked in a room with her, and he goes and he deliberately puts on his shoes, his big heavy shoes, in order to kick her in her pregnant belly. And I just kind of thought, oh my God, that's going too far. And I rang my editor and I said, look, there's a scene in the book that I've written that I'm really not comfortable with. Will you have a look and tell me what you think? And she came back to me and she said, it's definitely a gasp moment. She said, when I read it, I really went, but she said, that's what you want. That's what you want in a book. You want your readers to be shocked and horrified. But the funny thing is, I didn't say anything to my American editors about that, but they came back to me and said, "Can you tone down that scene? That's way too much. That's way too much." So that scene is now kind of all verbal. It's all verbal insults. So yeah, it's slightly different.
No, I mean, definitely. I think all of us who've read, like, all of us have read the book, and the fact that, that particular scene, it was definitely something that really stayed with us, and we were like, oh my God, like that's actually happening, and Peter, and the fact that she was pregnant, I think that added another layer of, trauma, I would say.
I
So,
know, but that's the only violence that's described in the entire book.
yeah.
Like everything else is implied. We're not in the room when Conor Geary is doing his stuff. We're not, it's it's not graphically violent, the book. So I'm just seeing a couple of reviews where people are saying this has got absolutely disgusting scenes of pedophilia and trigger warnings of graphic violence. And I'm kind of going, that's your imagination. That's not my writing. You imagine that. So your imagination has taken you to a much darker place than even I could have thought of. Um, and so, yeah, I kind of I have kind of an issue with trigger warnings. Obviously, I don't want anybody who reads it to be upset, but then I kind of do. I want, I like my books to disturb people, but I don't want anybody to be crying or upset. And I guess, um, it's all in context and nothing is described. So it's only as graphic as your imagination.
I think we readers thrive in trauma. We love trauma in books. You give it to us, and we're like, okay, I love it. So any book with trauma is, I think, are what we call Roman Empire. So yeah, I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much as I did, if there wouldn't have been what it had.
All my books have some degree of emotional trauma, but none of them. This is the first one. This is the only one that has rape in it or anything like that. But again, not described.
Even though, when the way you spoke about trauma, even though it was implied, we could feel it. Like you said, it's as big as our imagination. And even though the words are not there, whatever was implied was upsetting in a way where we didn't imagine it, but we could feel the emotions that Sally went through. And I think that's why this book was relatable to us in such a way that, if a person has gone through so much, if you can tap into any kind of emotion that the person has gone through, that means you've like hit our emotions. So I think that was really well written, Liz, like the entire trauma and aspect of Sally's.
Talking about trauma, I think when you mentioned about the fact that how he would, extract the tooth, I think that also gave me like a very eerie vibe, because that was something there for Denise, and that was also something that happened to the second woman the second girl that he'd abducted, and that's something that really stuck with me, and that was like his signature, I would say. Every sort of person who does some sort of something bad to the other person, I'm wording it absolutely terribly, but that's what my thought
Oh,
process is.
I mean, isn't an evil dentist everybody's worst
Yeah,
nightmare?
and Liz, I'm a dentist myself, so just imagine that scene.
I'm so
Oh
sorry.
my God,
So sorry. That's so
no.
funny. Oh my God. You people have the capacity to scare the living daylights out of us. Do you know that?
That question.
So, as I said, I was unsettled throughout the book. One of the things that unsettled me was Peter's trauma. I mean, what he didn't experience it himself, like the abduction and everything. Like he wasn't in place of Sally or his mother, but he did see what was going on with them, and that definitely left an impact on him, which led to his ending. I mean, Peter's twisted mind was something that we were flabbergasted with. We were like, oh my God, what did just happen here? So I just want to know, because I personally never saw it coming that this would be his ending. So what was your thought process behind crafting his character?
I know I wanted an ending, like a shocking ending. And like, if you've read me before, you know I don't do happy endings. Like, and I like to be kind of Shakespearean with like everybody's dead or everybody's shocked or everybody's traumatized, or you know, one person can cause damage to so many other people. But I think uh given the way Peter was brought up, and given the way it was so normalized for him to have a woman locked up, you know, when he was growing up. And the difference is that he is kind. You know what I mean? He is not violent. He's not a pedophile. He, you know, like he waited years for Lindy to fall in love with him before he made a move. Like he never touched her without her consent. So, but he's still a monster. You know, at the end, he is still a monster. He's going out there to kidnap somebody. And that's that was the shock that I needed. You know, I kind of thought, what would he do? I kind of thought, okay, we've got them together now. This should be the happy ending. The happy ending is they find each other, you know, Sally integrates him with her community. But I kind of thought, he's never integrated. He's never had therapy. He's never known what what it's like to be normal. So I don't see him. When I was writing, I just kind of thought, this doesn't feel right to me, because I originally I did write him integrating and going to a dinner party with Sally, and I just kind of thought, this doesn't feel right for the character. And I just thought, no, it's gonna take him, like if he does stay with Sally, it's gonna take him 5 years to integrate into that community. And I really I had to think about that very hard, and I realized that the truth of the situation is that he wouldn't, and that he wouldn't connect with Sally in the same way. Like, she's so delighted to finally have a brother and to have somebody who knows her experience, and you know, but she doesn't know the whole truth. She doesn't know about Lindy. She doesn't know that that after his father died, he kept Lindy for years. She doesn't know that Peter had a baby and gave it away against Lindy's wishes. You know, she doesn't know half of the truth. And how can Peter ever be fixed by a psychotherapist if he can't tell her the truth? And he can't. He's stuck. He's locked in this situation where he can never tell the truth. And because of that, he can never be free himself. Like, he's
There,
locked
there,
into a situation. It's so,
sorry.
like, I find him much sadder. I find his story much sadder than Sally's. And not that I condone what he does, but I understand it. You know, it's awful. It's awful that he's brought up in such a way that he can never live a normal life.
Yeah. There is this line which says, where Peter says, I'm not like my father, but then there is this question in my mind all the time, isn't he though? Because he's, as you said, he's still a monster. He still abducts young girls until they fall in, like, and keep them captivated until they fall in love with him. So what he still is like his father in some way. And I definitely think that all the trauma that he carried while his father was alive, it stayed, and it has definitely shaped how he became as a person. And I mean, even if he went into psychotherapy, I feel like that's something nobody can fix. I mean, it's rooted so deeply. It's so deep within him that it's just now the way he lives, and he will live forever. That's how I imagine him in my mind. And yeah,
Me too.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was really it was something different that I read. I've never read something like this. And seeing a perspective like this just made me realize that yes, people with trauma are capable of so many things that are just not acceptable in this world. I mean, it's just so damaging.
I know. I know. I like. I kind of I feel like apologizing for the ending because it's so traumatic, but at the same time, that's 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 I think that's the truth of Peter's situation, given his background and his upbringing. Like he does have a couple of years of living in Auckland and working in a bank, but he can't relate to people. Like, in every office situation, and I know I've worked in several offices and lots of people and everything, there's always somebody who is a little bit on the outside, but they want to be on the outside, and that's fine. You leave them alone, but you don't imagine what's going. And when every time one of these people is caught, and I'm talking about kidnappers or murders, or everybody says, oh, he was a very quiet person, he kept himself to himself, he didn't bother anybody, and that seems to be the trademark, that he didn't bother anybody. Well, I think he did. you know he murdered several people, and he kidnapped, but yeah,
And I think
it's
that was the difference. Sally was rescued and Peter was never rescued.
yeah,
Sally still had, her adoptive parents to kind of guide her and integrate into the society. But
yeah,
Peter never had that. He had to do everything on his own. So I
yeah.
think that's why his ending was true to his character, like you said, like he couldn't have had any other ending.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. He couldn't have been any other way given his
Right.
childhood and his upbringing.
Yes, and I think adding just like one last thing I would like to mention, like for the fact that you were talking about Peter Percy and you mentioned Lindsay also. So I think there was one moment where he was like when he left Lindsay and just to see that whether she would leave or not leave, like her world. As of now, that is what her new reality was, and the fact that she was so skeptical, like she did not want to enter or go into a crowded place, and that really made my heart very sad because that was her reality. And now whatever the reality, like the actual reality and her reality were poles apart because of the situational element that you added there. And I think that was something that really stuck with me, that particular scene. That's something that I was like, oh my god, that was really really heartbreaking scene, that
I
particular.
think I think I think having been Connor's victim and him treating her so badly and like removing her teeth or whatever as punishment for her trying to escape and everything. Like the fact that Peter didn't do any of that, and that he never raped her, he never molested her. He waited and waited and waited until she came to him, until she came around, and he was willing to do that. Um, that's oh God, how can I describe it? I just think it's kind of Stockholm syndrome that she comes to identify with her kidnapper,
Right.
or to see that worldview. And by the time Peter actually does open the door and let her wander about and let her into the house, her world is tiny. Her world is those four walls. She doesn't even go outside the gate or I don't know if they have a gate. I don't think I gave them a gate. Did I give them a gate? I don't think I did.
No, I
But she doesn't go beyond the road because her world has shrunk to this. And even when she's dying, when she's been taken to the hospital, I think the last thing she says to Peter is, "I'm scared." And he says, "Don't, it'll be fine, we'll get you seen to." And she said, "No, of other people."
right.
The Maori boy who lived next door, like that friendship, that like Peter had the opportunity of having a friendship, like a proper friend, and then lost it because he was told a lie about a disease that he had. He could have saved Rangi so easily, but he was afraid that he'd die himself if he did.
Yeah, and yeah, that was also very heartbreaking when we saw that, that how he died and how heartbreaking it was, because we, like, as readers, we knew that, that he actually did not have anything, but then that was his mind. That was, like how he was basically brought up by his father. So yes, that's definitely there. And as we're adding to this element of, like, all the chapters in the books were short. And I think that added like a very addictive sort of a feel, like, you wanting to know what exactly. So what was that intentional, like keeping the chapters short, or that was just something that just just happened while you were writing?
I think it happened in the writing because I think there's only two chapters that feature Rangi. There's the introduction of Rangi, and then the next one is like 6 months later, and Rangi dies.
Right.
So Rangi has a very short, but very significant role to play, because in the pace of a book, you can't have a chapter with Rangi and Peter just being friends because that's not very dramatic. So I had the one part where they made friends and it looks like things are going to turn around, that Peter's going to have a friend. And then the next time we see Rangi is the drowning.
Right.
And so, yeah, because you have to keep the pace up. It's the one thing that's the most difficult about writing a book, is keeping up the pace,
Right.
having incident in every chapter,
Right.
having something visual happening, so that the reader's imagination is working, because you guys have to bring something to the table as well. I expect all of your imagination to be working too. Yeah, so I give you plenty of stuff to imagine.
That is true. No one's denying that. So, like, moving on to the next part, I think we're gonna dive into a little bit into Sally's character. I think my sister has a question on that.
So it's like we read the entire book through Sally's and Peter's POV. Now I want to concentrate on Sally's POV. Now the way she views, like you said, is very literal. What she says is what she sees, and what she sees is what she says. For her, everything is as it is. And the way you wrote it, the start of the book, when she says, I burned my father. And then she says, because that's what he told me to do. Even though it's not a humorous situation, but the kind of way she perceived it and the way she said it made it much more easier for me, for us readers to digest. Okay, oh my God, this is something that she has done. But because she is she, I can imagine her doing something like that. So, how did you come up with this aspect of Sally's character, of being so literal, so that her strangeness and her way of things made her much more appealing to us as a reader, so that we can
Well,
feel like we are rooting for her from the first page? Like, how did you
yeah,
do that?
I think Sally has a great sense of humor. She's funny, but I definitely didn't want people laughing at her. I hope that the readers were laughing with her, at her. The ridiculousness of the situation
Exactly.
was so crazy. But then, when we go deeper into the book, we understand why, because she, but her father was a bit stupid to say something like that in the first place, because he knows Sally, he knows what she's like, but he did leave his instructions, and he left his instructions with his funeral instructions. He left everything there for her, but she didn't open the envelope because it wasn't her birthday yet. you know So, and it didn't say open now. And she, she was waiting for her birthday to open the letter because she was sure that's the only time she ever gets a letter is when her father gives her a card on her birthday. So yeah, that birthday present is a bit of a shocker for Sally. But I think I deliberately use a lot of humor in order to um, make Sally more relatable because yeah, everybody likes a bit of a laugh, and I don't I I'm a very, very light-hearted person in real life, despite what I write, and you know I just kind of thought if you put the humor in there, then people will more easily accept what she's done. You know, instead of being horrified, they're kind of laughing behind their hands, because it's weird but wacky and funny and then wearing the hat to the funeral and stuff like that and you know and pretending to be deaf so that she doesn't have to talk to people. This is all good stuff. This is all stuff that, there are times in my life where I wish I could pretend to be deaf. Um, but at this stage, everybody knows I can talk because I've talked in every nationality and you know, I've been on TV so much and radios and newspapers. Everybody knows I can talk, so I can't get away with pretending.
But I mean, I think all of us in our lives somewhere down the line did want to pretend that we are deaf because we wanted to get out of something or the other. So completely relate to that 100%. And yeah, like the fact that it was deliberate, the humor, and I think in a dark book, I think adding that element of humor really elevated it to a level that made it more relatable to the readers and as a reader enjoying it, even though how twisted it was. So I think that was, I think, beautifully done. So yeah, and now so moving on to a little bit of inner meaning to stuff that you've mentioned in the book. So the the piano and the teddy bear, I think they had like a symbolic meaning to it. So I would like to know, like, so something that was a source of like for Sally, whenever she felt anxious, she would like play the piano. But then, as soon as Peter mentioned that the piano tune, what it reminded him of and what exactly happened, it sort of became like a source of agony for her. So like, and the teddy bear, like, even though during the most traumatic times, like that was something that she clung to it because that was something given by her mother to her. But then when it was taken away, she felt like, even though she did not know the entire thing, but she felt like a part of her was being taken away. So can you share insights into the process of incorporating this sort of symbolism into the story?
Well, with the piano, it only came to me at the very end. I kind of thought, she's not. It's not like Rain Man, where she has this incredible gift that comes out of nowhere. It's inherited. Her gift for playing the piano comes from her birth father, and it's when she finds that out, she smashes that piano, and because it's it's the only thing that's given her comfort and joy. Now, I do think after the book ends, I think she'll go out and buy another piano. I do like after everything that's happened, I do think that um there is a happy ending for Sally. I don't think I don't think her friends are going to allow her to revert back to who she was. And I think eventually she'll get a job as piano teacher and she'll teach all the local kids. She'll have a baby coming to the house and she'll teach her piano and she'll teach all the local kids piano. That's what I wish for her, that she becomes a piano teacher and she teaches um all the local kids. And I think the teddy bear was a different thing because I realized at the end the teddy bear had kind of been lost. Like we knew that Peter had taken it, like because he had it for years in New Zealand. He took it from her when he was leaving the house, when they ran away, when Peter and Connor ran away, Peter grabbed the teddy bear and managed to hide it from Connor for, whatever, 10 years, 5 years, I think until Connor's dead. And then keeps it as an adult and brings it back to Sally, posts it back to Sally, and then it gets handed over to the police. Then it's back to her. She has it. And then when Peter leaves, he takes the teddy bear. And we don't know why he has taken this teddy bear, but now he knows who his daughter is.
Right.
And it's just at that very ending. That was the hopeful ending, that the daughter, Amanda, Lindy and Peter's daughter, rejects the past.
Yeah.
She is not going to go ahead with this podcast. She wants to be known for her accomplishments and not for her horrific childhood. So I think that's, I just wanted the bit of continuity with the teddy bear and with the piano all the way through. And I wanted Sally to not to be a kind of a Rain Man character, or one of these people with special gifts. She's a very good pianist, but she's not a concert pianist. She's not a composer. Her daughter, or sorry, her niece, Peter and Lindy's daughter, studies it. So she's been in the Academy of Music, so she has a gift for it. But her gift is developed and nurtured, and so she does become a composer. But that's believable,
Right.
But yeah, the teddy bear and the I'd have to tell you the truth about the teddy bear, because for every single book I have written, I have wanted a very I have asked them to put, because all of my books are about people who have damaged childhoods. And for every single book, I have asked them to put a really damaged looking teddy bear on the cover. And every single time they have said no. It's just annoyed me so much. So this time I wrote a damaged teddy bear into the book so that they would put the teddy bear on the cover. Did they? No. They didn't put the teddy bear on the cover. And I was so annoyed, because I now know, like, I can't put a damaged teddy bear into any other book. So yeah, it's finished. Like, unless I write a sequel or something. But funny enough, the Bulgarian edition of Sally Diamond has a damaged teddy bear on the cover. And I didn't even ask them. They just did, because they knew. So I do have the cover is different. It's a teddy bear in a box, but it's an old teddy bear. But I had a very specific teddy bear picture in mind.
Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing that particular aspect of why teddy bear, why you added that element. So yes, Shambhavi has something. So yes, Shambhavi. Oh, she has a teddy bear.
Oh,
Is this
yeah.
teddy bear visible? Like the
That's
moment
funny.
I finished this book, I went to the market and I saw this and I knew I had to get this.
That's brilliant. Thank you
Look
so
at
much.
this.
So it's like Sally's relationship with her extended family and the people of the community per se drive her to attempt to become a part of the normal society, how she can integrate so that she can have friends and she can have like people who are beyond. But somehow during her journey through her development process, everyone in her life somewhat has an ulterior motive, right? As to why they are with Sally or why they are coming together with her. And in the end, she says something like, I was right not to trust anyone. And she somehow shakes her head, and like it looks like she's going back into her shell. So that honestly was a heart tugger for us as readers, because we were so rooting that she would come out of it. And you just mentioned right now that you could imagine her being a pianist. So that suddenly gave me a sudden spurt of hope. Oh my God, maybe I interpreted the ending wrong. So I just want to know what was your thing about Sally's ending? The way you wrote it and how you're imagining it, were they the same or has it changed over a period of time? Like, what was it?
No, there's actually two different endings to the book. There's in the American ending, there's just one extra chapter, and it's a letter from Angela to Sally, and it's written during the pandemic. So she says, dear Sally, as you can appreciate, and it's written like maybe 3 months after it's the second last chapter, so it's before Amanda's thing, Amanda's chapter, and she just says, dear Sally, um, I'm really sorry that everybody has disappointed you, but you owe some people an apology, and some people owe you an apology. Because she has scared her aunt Christine. She really frightened her. So she owes Christine an apology, and she owes some of her friends an apology. She's ignored them, and who is it? Sue has sold her story to a newspaper or something. But Anne just says, look, if it wasn't Sue, it would have been somebody who had an ulterior motive. Sue likes you. She wanted them to get the story straight, and so that they knew, so that everybody would know that you didn't know what Peter was up to. So there's the letter basically says, so on Saturday, next Saturday, we are all going to come to your house, and we're going to stand outside your house, and we're going to sing badly until you come out. And then we're going to
Wow.
go for a walk, and we're going to go into the park, and we're all going to share a picnic. And she just says at the end, wrap up warm, and I'll see you Saturday.
Oh,
So we
wow.
know at the end that Sally is not going to go back. She's not going to be allowed to go back into that world that she was in.
Also, can you share any details about your upcoming projects or ideas for future novels? Like any specific themes or genres that you're eager to explore in your next work?
I can tell you that I can't tell you anything about the book, but I can tell you the opening line.
Okay.
Right.
They're all
Okay. And this may change because my editor hasn't seen it. So, anything could change. But the opening line is, for the second time that month, I woke up with the wrong husband.
okay. We are all set for it now.
Oh my God, that is one banger of a first
Wow.
line.
Yeah. Amazing. I need it right now.
Well, you're going to have to wait because I don't think publication date isn't until 2026.
Oh
So
my,
it's 2 more years. Yeah.
That's
wow.
long, but then I think that's like something that we were given that's gonna stay in our head for sure, like in our mind for till the time we get
I hope it's still there when it gets published because my editor hasn't seen it. It could completely change. I don't
Oh,
know. We'll see.
two painful years for us, Liz.
No, that's definitely there. So, thank you so much, Liz, for taking out the time and spending a 1.5 hour with us. So that's quite amazing. We had a blast. We hope to bring you on board again with the next release with that opening line that you've left with us, and we're gonna definitely remember. 2026 is the year. Definitely gonna remember that.
I'll see you then. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.